Jordan Brooks was 38 years old, and every morning started the same way. Coffee first. Black. Cheap. Strong enough to push sleep out of his bones before the sun climbed over the rooftops of South Chicago. Then came Noah's lunchbox. Turkey sandwich cut diagonally because the boy hated straight edges. Apple slices wrapped in napkins. One chocolate chip cookie if the bills that week had not hit too hard. Small rituals. Quiet things. The kind nobody applauded. The kind that kept a child feeling safe. Their apartment sat above an old hardware store beside the train tracks, where the windows rattled every time the 6:30 freight rolled through. Paint peeled near the kitchen sink. The heater clicked like tired knuckles in winter. But the place was clean. Always clean. Jordan made sure of that. Because dignity, to him, was not money. It was care. It was folded blankets. Washed dishes. Shoes lined by the door. It was showing his son that hard times did not have to turn a man careless. "Dad," Noah mumbled one rainy morning, rubbing sleep from his eyes, "you think rich people get tired too?" Jordan glanced over from the stove, pancake batter sizzling softly. "Everybody gets tired, buddy." Noah thought about that carefully. "Then why do they always look so angry?" Jordan smiled faintly, but he did not answer right away. Outside, rain slid down the fire escape in silver lines. "Sometimes people forget how to rest," he said quietly. By 7:15, they were out the door. Noah's backpack bounced against his shoulders while Jordan locked the apartment with the same slow precision he used for everything else. His truck waited near the curb. Old Ford. Faded blue paint. Heater barely worked. But the engine still turned over every morning, and these days, that counted as grace. Jordan drove nights doing maintenance contracts for Kensington Holdings downtown. Temporary work. Nothing glamorous. Fixing lights. Repairing doors. Keeping expensive buildings running while executives slept behind glass walls high above the city. Most people inside those buildings never looked at him long enough to remember his face. To them, he was just another black man in work boots carrying tools through marble hallways. But Jordan had learned years ago that being underestimated could either poison a man or sharpen him. He chose the second. The storm started getting worse around noon. Wind slapped rain against the skyscrapers hard enough to blur the city into gray watercolor streaks. By evening, the lobby of Kensington Tower smelled like wet umbrellas, polished stone, and expensive perfume. Jordan stepped inside carrying his old toolbox in one hand and Noah's small backpack in the other. School had closed early because of flooding, and the babysitter canceled last minute. So Noah stayed with him. Again. Some of the office workers noticed immediately. Their eyes moved from Jordan's worn jacket to the child beside him. Then away. Fast. One receptionist forced a polite smile. Another didn't bother. Jordan noticed. He always noticed. But he simply nodded and kept walking toward the service elevator. "Employees only after 6, a sharp voice interrupted. Jordan turned calmly. A security manager stood near the desk, jaw tight beneath fluorescent lights. "Maintenance," Jordan replied evenly, holding up his ID badge. The man's eyes dropped toward Noah. "This isn't a daycare." Jordan glanced at his son, then back at the guard. "No, sir. It's just temporary until the storm passes." The guard looked ready to argue again. Then suddenly, the entire lobby shifted. Quiet first. Then movement. Heads turning. Heels crossing marble. Claire Kensington entered the building like someone stepping into a room she owned because she did. Tall. Elegant. Cream-colored coat still damp from the rain. Blonde hair pinned loosely at the back of her neck. Her expression controlled in the way only powerful people mastered after years of never letting the world see them unravel. Conversations softened when she walked past. Even the guard straightened instantly. Claire barely looked at anyone at first. Her assistant was already listing delayed meetings beside her while she removed black leather gloves one finger at a time. Then she saw Jordan. Or rather, she saw Noah first. The little boy stood beside the old toolbox clutching a dinosaur backpack with tired eyes and rainwater still dripping from his sneakers. Something in Claire's face flickered. Brief. Almost invisible. Then her gaze lifted toward Jordan. And the moment their eyes met, the coffee cup slipped from her hand. Hot coffee splashed across the marble floor. Gasps echoed lightly through the lobby. Claire froze. So did everyone else. Because powerful women like Claire Kensington did not lose composure in public. Ever. But Jordan moved before anyone else could react. Calmly. Quietly. He handed Noah the toolbox, grabbed a stack of napkins from the reception desk, and crouched to clean the spill without a single complaint. "Sir, maintenance handles that," the receptionist blurted awkwardly. Jordan kept wiping the floor anyway. "I know," he said softly. "I am maintenance." Claire kept watching him. Not the uniform. Not the boots. Him. Something felt wrong. Or familiar. She could not tell which unsettled her more. Noah noticed it before anyone else did. The boy tilted his head slowly while Claire stared down at Jordan with strange, unreadable eyes. Then Noah looked up at her and said, in the simple honest voice only children carried, "Miss. Why are you looking at my dad like you already know him?" Everything in the lobby seemed to stop after that moment. For a second, nobody in the lobby moved. Rain tapped softly against the towering glass walls 50 floors high above the city, but inside Kensington Tower, the silence felt heavier than weather. Claire Kensington stood perfectly still beside the spilled coffee, one leather glove hanging loosely from her fingertips. Embarrassment flickered across several employees' faces. Confusion crossed the security guards. But Jordan Brooks stayed calm. He always stayed calm. He finished wiping the marble floor carefully, tossed the soaked napkins into a nearby trash bin, then reached for his toolbox again. "Sorry about the mess," he said quietly, though it had not been his fault. Claire blinked like she had only just returned to the room. Her eyes shifted toward Noah. The boy still clutched the dinosaur backpack against his chest, watching her with innocent curiosity. Children notice things adults buried. "What floor are you assigned to?" Claire asked suddenly. Her voice was polished again now. Controlled. But softer than before. Jordan straightened slowly. "Maintenance rotation, ma'am. Mostly lower offices tonight." Claire looked at him another second too long. Something about the shape of his eyes unsettled her in ways she could not explain. Not attraction. Not fear. Something older. Deeper. Like hearing a song she had not heard in 30 years and somehow still remembering every word. "And your son?" she asked. "Babysitter cancelled because of the storm." Jordan rested one hand lightly on Noah's shoulder. "He will stay out of the way." The security manager opened his mouth again, ready to protest, but Claire lifted one finger slightly. That was all it took. Silence returned immediately. "It is fine," she said without looking away from Jordan. "Just make sure he stays warm." Jordan nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." He turned toward the service elevator with Noah beside him, old boots leaving faint rain marks across the polished floor. Claire watched them disappear behind closing steel doors. She kept watching even after they were gone. Something felt wrong. Upstairs, the executive floor glowed with soft amber lighting and quiet money. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago, where headlights smeared across wet streets like rivers of gold. Claire stood inside her office holding a fresh cup of coffee she had forgotten to drink. Her assistant, Melanie, continued reviewing tomorrow's board schedule, but Claire barely heard her. Her mind kept drifting back to the man downstairs. The calm in his voice. The way he protected the little boy without making a scene. The old toolbox. The tired coat. And those eyes. "Cancel the investor dinner tomorrow," Claire said suddenly. Melanie stopped mid-sentence. "Tomorrow's dinner with the Westlake Group. Move it." Melanie hesitated carefully. "You never move investor meetings." Claire finally looked away from the rain outside the glass wall. "Then let them enjoy the experience." Her assistant nodded cautiously and left the office without another word. Alone now, Claire loosened the silk scarf near her neck and sat down slowly behind her desk. But instead of opening financial reports, she reached toward the bottom drawer. Inside sat an old photograph beneath stacks of contracts and legal folders. A hospital bracelet. Faded. Worn thin with age. Claire stared at it without touching it. Then quickly shut the drawer again. Down on the 17th floor, fluorescent lights buzzed softly above Jordan while he fixed a damaged electrical panel beside the accounting offices. Noah sat nearby at an empty desk coloring dinosaurs on the back of discarded printer paper. The building smelled faintly of dust, fresh paint, and expensive carpet cleaner. "Dad?" Noah asked quietly without looking up. "Yeah, buddy." That lady looked sad. Jordan tightened a screw carefully before answering. Maybe she had a long day. Noah thought about that for a moment. "No," he said softly. "I think she looked sad before she saw us." Jordan glanced toward his son. The child kept coloring quietly, completely serious. Then Jordan noticed something strange lying beside Noah's backpack. A black leather glove. Expensive. Elegant. Claire Kensington's. He picked it up slowly, turning it over in his rough hands. And stitched inside the wrist lining, almost hidden beneath the seam, was a name he had not heard in over 20 years. Jordan stared at the stitched name inside the glove for several quiet seconds. Eleanor. The letters curved delicately into the black lining in fading silver thread, almost hidden beneath the seam. Something about it tugged faintly at the edge of memory, but not enough to explain the strange feeling settling in his chest. Noah looked up from his coloring pages. "Is that hers?" Jordan nodded slowly. "Looks like it." The boy placed his crayon down carefully. "She is probably cold." Jordan almost smiled at that. Children reduced the world to simple truths adults complicated. Someone loses a glove. Someone should return it. Nothing more. He slipped the glove gently into the side pocket of his jacket and returned to work. The storm outside deepened as the night dragged on. Wind rattled the upper windows of Kensington Tower while maintenance crews moved floor to floor fixing leaks, flickering lights, and overloaded circuits from the weather surge downtown. Jordan worked steadily without complaint, tightening loose panels beneath fluorescent lights while Noah eventually curled up asleep across two office chairs with his small jacket folded beneath his head. Around 10:30, Jordan draped his own coat over the boy and lowered the lights nearby so Noah could rest easier. He did not know someone was watching. From the security monitor upstairs, Claire Kensington stood silently beside the overnight operations desk, arms folded loosely as the camera displayed Jordan kneeling beside his sleeping son. The footage carried no sound. It did not need any. The tenderness in the gesture spoke clearly enough. One of the younger security employees shifted awkwardly nearby. "You want me to tell him children are not supposed to stay overnight?" he asked carefully. Claire kept watching the monitor another moment. Jordan adjusted Noah's backpack beneath the child's head with slow patience before returning to repair work without waking him. "No," Claire said quietly. "Leave them alone." The employee nodded, surprised by the softness in her voice. Claire rarely repeated herself. She rarely explained herself either. But tonight something inside her felt unsettled in ways she could not control. She looked away from the monitor and headed toward the executive elevator, heels echoing softly against polished stone. Yet halfway there, she stopped. Turned back. "Get me his employee file," she said. Jordan Brooks. 20 minutes later, the file sat unopened on her desk beside untouched coffee gone cold. Claire leaned back slowly in her chair while downtown Chicago shimmered outside the glass wall behind her. Rain streaked the skyline silver and gray. Jordan Brooks. 38 years old. Temporary maintenance contractor. No criminal history. No complaints. Former mechanical systems technician before layoffs 6 years earlier. Widowed. One child. Claire skimmed the page without emotion at first. Then she noticed the birth date. Her fingers stopped moving. The room suddenly felt too quiet. She looked down again to make sure she had read it correctly. March 17, 1987. Claire's heartbeat slowed in an uncomfortable rhythm she had not felt in years. Impossible, she thought immediately. Just coincidence. The city held millions of people. Millions of birthdays. Millions of strangers. But still, she kept staring at the date long after logic should have settled her nerves. Something felt wrong. Downstairs, Jordan finally finished the electrical repairs near midnight. He washed grease from his hands in a janitor's sink while Noah rubbed sleep from his eyes nearby. "We going home now?" the boy whispered. "Soon." Jordan dried his hands slowly. "Just one more thing first." He took the executive elevator alone up to the 50th floor, the black leather glove resting quietly in his jacket pocket. The upper offices stood nearly empty now, dim lights glowing across silent hallways lined with abstract paintings and expensive glass sculptures. He approached Claire's office carefully, boots muffled against thick carpet. Through the partially open doorway, he saw her standing by the windows overlooking the rain-soaked skyline, completely still. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jordan gently removed the glove from his pocket. "Your assistant said this might belong to you." Claire turned slowly. The moment her eyes landed on the glove in his hand, her expression changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough for Jordan to notice. Enough for something deep inside her to tighten unexpectedly. Then she saw the old silver bracelet hanging faintly beneath the cuff of his sleeve. And suddenly she could not breathe for half a second. Claire Kensington stared at the silver bracelet beneath Jordan's sleeve as though the tiny piece of metal had reached across decades and grabbed hold of her throat. The room suddenly felt smaller. Warmer. Her fingers tightened slowly around the leather glove he had returned. Jordan noticed the shift immediately. Not fear exactly. More like shock carefully disguised beneath expensive composure. He lowered his hand slightly. "You okay, ma'am?" Claire blinked once before answering. "Yes." But the word came too quickly. Too thin. Jordan waited politely near the doorway while rain rolled down the massive windows behind her office. Far below, Chicago traffic glowed red and white through the storm like moving rivers of light. He had spent enough years around wealthy executives to recognize when someone was trying very hard not to show emotion. Claire crossed toward her desk with measured steps, placing the glove down beside several untouched files. "Thank you for bringing it back." "No problem." Silence settled between them again. Jordan shifted his toolbox slightly in his hand. "My son found it downstairs." Claire nodded faintly. "The little boy." "Noah." Something softened in Jordan's voice when he said the name. Claire noticed that too. Parents always changed when they spoke about their children. Even exhausted ones. Especially exhausted ones. She looked at him carefully now, really looking for the first time. The rain-darkened jacket. The rough hands. The quiet posture of a man used to carrying weight without asking anyone to notice. There was dignity in him. The kind money could not manufacture. How old is he? She asked. 8. Jordan almost smiled. Talks like he is 40. Claire gave the faintest breath of laughter before she could stop herself. The sound surprised both of them. It had been a long time since laughter entered that office without strategy attached to it. Jordan noticed family photographs turned face down near the bookshelf but politely looked away. He always knew where not to stare. You should get him home, Claire said after a moment. It is late. Jordan nodded once. That was the plan. He turned slightly toward the hallway. Then Claire spoke again before she could rethink it. Wait. Jordan stopped. Claire walked slowly back behind her desk, fingers brushing the edge of the employee file still lying open beside her cold coffee. She glanced down briefly at his name. Jordan Brooks. Then back at him. The operations department lost 2 supervisors this week because of the flooding downtown, she said carefully. We need someone reliable overnight for temporary coordination until repairs are finished. Jordan frowned slightly, confused. You mean maintenance coordination? Yes. Ma'am, I fix wiring and broken pipes. I am not corporate management. I am aware. Her tone stayed calm. But reliability matters more right now. Jordan hesitated. Something about the offer felt strange. He could sense it. People like Claire Kensington did not usually notice men like him twice, let alone offer them responsibility above their station. But he also knew what overtime money could mean for Noah's school clothes next month. Or groceries. Or heat when winter deepened. Temporary, he asked quietly. Claire nodded. Night shift only. Better pay. Jordan studied her for a moment. There was tension behind her composed expression now, like she was making a decision even she did not fully understand. Something felt wrong. Or maybe important. He could not tell yet. All right, he said finally. I can help. Claire exhaled slowly, almost relieved by his answer. Melanie will arrange access credentials tomorrow morning. Jordan adjusted the toolbox in his hand again. Thank you, ma'am. He started toward the door once more. Then Claire noticed the bracelet again as his sleeve shifted beneath the office lights. Her heartbeat stumbled unexpectedly. Mr. Brooks? He turned back. Yes. Claire's eyes remained fixed on the bracelet. Where did you get that? Jordan glanced down at the worn silver band on his wrist. The metal had faded with age, scratched from years of work and weather. Had it since I was a baby, he answered simply. My adoptive mother said I came with it. Claire went completely still. Jordan noticed the color drain slightly from her face. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Then, softly, almost to herself, Claire whispered, That is impossible. Jordan stood quietly in the doorway while Claire Kensington stared at the silver bracelet like it had just spoken to her. The office lights reflected faintly across the scratched metal circling his wrist, old and worn from decades of work. Rain continued sliding down the glass behind her, soft and endless against the skyline. Impossible? Jordan repeated carefully. Claire blinked hard once, pulling herself back together with visible effort. Years of boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations had trained her face to recover quickly. Too quickly. Nothing, she said softly. It is just, older than I expected. Jordan glanced down at the bracelet again. Far as I know, it has always been old. He gave the faintest shrug. My mother used to say I came into the world already carrying history. Claire's throat tightened unexpectedly at the word mother. She looked away before he could notice. You were adopted? She asked, keeping her tone controlled. Jordan nodded once. When I was a few months old. He did not elaborate. People usually ask too many questions after that sentence. Tonight, strangely, Claire did not. She simply stood there absorbing the information in silence. Jordan shifted his toolbox again. I should get Noah home. Claire looked toward the dark hallway outside her office as if remembering where she was. Of course. Jordan turned to leave. Then Claire surprised herself again. Mr. Brooks. He stopped near the doorway. Yes, ma'am. The coordination role starts tomorrow night. 7 p.m. Jordan nodded politely. I will be here. And bring Noah if you need to. The words escaped before she fully thought them through. Jordan frowned slightly, caught off guard by the kindness. Executives usually tolerated children. They did not accommodate them. Thank you, he said quietly. Claire gave a small nod and watched him disappear down the hallway carrying the old toolbox in one hand and 30 years of unanswered questions she did not yet know how to survive. The next evening, Kensington Tower glowed against the city like a ship of glass floating through rain clouds. Jordan arrived exactly 6 minutes early wearing the cleanest shirt he owned beneath his work jacket. Noah walked beside him carrying a science book and a paper bag filled with crackers, apples, and peanut butter sandwiches Jordan made before leaving home. The lobby staff noticed the difference immediately. Yesterday he had been maintenance. Tonight he wore a temporary management badge clipped beside his chest. Some employees greeted him differently now. Others looked annoyed by it. Jordan noticed both reactions and trusted neither. Dad, Noah whispered while they crossed the marble floor, does this mean we are rich now? Jordan almost laughed. No, buddy. Then why are people suddenly smiling at you? Jordan glanced toward the front desk where the same security manager from yesterday now nodded politely at him. People change when titles change. Noah thought about that seriously. That seems weird. It is. Upstairs, Claire stood inside the executive conference room pretending to review quarterly projections while her attention kept drifting toward the hallway outside. She told herself she was only checking whether operations coordination had been assigned correctly. Nothing more. Yet when Jordan finally appeared through the glass doors with Noah beside him, she immediately noticed small details she should not have noticed at all. The careful way he fixed Noah's crooked hood without interrupting conversation. The way the boy instinctively walked close beside him. The exhaustion hidden beneath Jordan's calm expression. She kept watching. Miss Kensington. Melanie's voice cut gently through her thoughts. Claire looked up. Sorry. Continue. But even while the meeting resumed around her, Claire found herself glancing toward the hallway again. Jordan had stopped near the coffee station while Noah flipped through his science book beside him. A spilled cup suddenly slid off the counter nearby, hot coffee rushing toward an assistant's laptop. Before anyone reacted, Jordan moved quickly, catching the cup mid-fall with one hand while shielding the computer with the other. No panic. No performance. Just instinct. You okay? He asked the startled assistant calmly. The young woman nodded, embarrassed. Thank you. Jordan simply handed her the cup back and continued walking like nothing important had happened. Inside the conference room, Claire slowly lowered the report in her hands. Something inside her chest tightened again. Not because he had caught the coffee. Because he had done it without needing recognition. Without changing expression. Like helping people was simply who he was when nobody important was watching. And somehow, that hurt more than she could explain. The storm finally cleared by Thursday night, but Kensington Tower still carried the exhausted mood of people who had not properly rested in days. Coffee machines hissed non-stop across executive floors. Elevators chimed every few seconds. Somewhere deep in the building, soft piano music drifted through hidden ceiling speakers, elegant and almost lonely against the quiet hum of computers. Jordan moved steadily through it all like he belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. He spent most of the evening checking repair schedules, redirecting maintenance crews, and helping overloaded assistants carry supply boxes between departments when elevators stalled. He never acted like the temporary title meant anything special. That alone confused people. Around 9:15, Noah sat near the operations desk working through a science worksheet while Jordan reviewed overnight repair requests beside him. The boy's small sneakers swung beneath the chair as he chewed thoughtfully on the end of a pencil. "Dad," Noah whispered suddenly, "how come rich offices are always so quiet?" Jordan glanced around the polished hallway. "People whisper when they are scared of losing things." Noah frowned slightly. "That sounds tiring." Jordan smiled faintly. "Probably is." A few feet away, Claire Kensington stepped out of a late investor call just in time to overhear the conversation. She paused beside the glass wall unnoticed for a moment, arms folded loosely across her cream-colored blazer. Most executives in her world spent years learning how to sound impressive. Jordan somehow made simple sentences land harder than boardroom speeches. Noah looked up from his worksheet, then spotted Claire standing nearby. "Hi, Miss Kensington." Claire's expression softened immediately. "Hi, Noah." Jordan turned in his chair, surprised she was still in the building this late. "Evening, ma'am." Claire nodded politely. "You are still here. So are you." The answer came naturally before Jordan could filter it. A few nearby assistants froze slightly, waiting for tension that never came. Claire simply looked at him for a second longer than expected. Then, quietly, she said, "Fair point." Something shifted after that. Small. Barely visible. But real. Noah pushed his science book aside and looked curiously between them. "Dad says people forget how to rest when they are sad." Jordan immediately gave the boy a gentle look. "Noah." "What?" the child asked innocently. "You said that Tuesday." Claire studied Jordan carefully now. Not offended. Not defensive. Just thoughtful in a way she had not been for years. "Did you?" she asked softly. Jordan rubbed one tired hand across the back of his neck. "Kids remember everything." Noah leaned toward Claire confidentially. "He also says pancakes fix bad mornings." Claire blinked once. Then unexpectedly, a real smile touched her face. Small. Warm. Gone almost instantly. But Jordan noticed it. So did everyone else nearby. Because Claire Kensington almost never smiled at work. Noah watched her carefully for another second before asking the question that changed the air completely. "Did your mom ever forget you too?" Silence. Immediate and heavy. One assistant nearly dropped the folder in her hands. Jordan straightened slowly beside his son, caught off guard. "Buddy," he said quietly, "that is personal." But Noah kept looking at Claire with honest concern, not rudeness. Children asked questions adults spent entire lives avoiding. Claire felt something sharp twist unexpectedly inside her chest. For half a second, she could not speak at all. The polished executive mask she wore every day suddenly felt fragile. "Why would you ask me that?" she finally managed softly. Noah shrugged. "Because sometimes you look lonely when everybody else leaves." The hallway went completely still. Jordan looked genuinely embarrassed now. "I am sorry, ma'am." Claire did not answer right away. She stared at Noah instead. The child's eyes held no judgment. No strategy. Just quiet observation. It unsettled her more than criticism ever could. Then Noah added one final thing in the same soft voice. "My dad says lonely people pretend they are busy so nobody notices." Claire's breath caught slightly. Because 30 years ago, someone else had once said almost the exact same thing to her. And suddenly, for the first time in decades, she could not stop wondering whether some memories were meant to stay buried at all. The hallway slowly came back to life after Noah's question, but something invisible had already shifted. Assistants returned to their desks quieter than before. Elevator doors opened and closed with soft mechanical chimes. Somewhere farther down the executive floor, a printer hummed steadily against the silence. Yet Claire Kensington remained standing exactly where she was, staring at the little boy beside Jordan like he had accidentally uncovered something she had spent decades hiding from herself. Jordan finally cleared his throat gently. "Noah," he said in a calm voice only tired fathers mastered, "go finish your worksheet at the desk for me." Noah nodded immediately. "Okay, Dad." The boy gathered his pencils and science book before disappearing toward the operations area, sneakers squeaking softly against polished floors. Jordan waited until Noah was out of earshot before looking back at Claire. "I am sorry about that." Claire blinked once, still distracted by the strange ache building quietly in her chest. "You do not have to apologize." Jordan gave a faint smile. Parents usually apologize at least 3 times a day. That almost pulled another smile from her. Almost. But exhaustion hit Claire suddenly and without warning. Not physical exhaustion. Something heavier. The kind carried by people who had spent too many years holding themselves together because nobody else would. She reached for the glass conference table beside her as if steadying herself for a moment. Jordan noticed immediately. "You all right?" Claire straightened too quickly. "I am fine." But her voice sounded thinner now. Less certain. Jordan had heard that tone before in hospital waiting rooms after his wife got sick. In exhausted parents pretending children could not see them falling apart. In himself. "You look dizzy," he said quietly. Claire hated how accurate that sounded. The truth was she had barely slept all week. Every time she closed her eyes lately, old memories surfaced before she could stop them. Hospital lights. Rain against windows. A crying infant. A silver bracelet. She turned away sharply toward the glass wall overlooking downtown Chicago, trying to regain control before anyone noticed. "I just need a minute." Jordan did not move closer. Did not crowd her with questions. That alone separated him from most people in her world. Powerful women like Claire spent their lives surrounded by men trying to fix them, impress them, or own pieces of them. Jordan simply stood nearby. Present. Quiet. Steady. The city lights reflected softly across the windows while silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Not empty. Just still. Claire pressed one hand lightly against her temple. Her breathing had become shallow without her realizing it. Jordan recognized it immediately. Panic. Small but building. "Look at the skyline," he said softly. Claire frowned slightly. "What?" "Just pick one building." She stared at him, confused. "Trust me." Something in his voice made her obey before pride could interfere. Claire focused on a tall tower glowing blue across the river. Jordan leaned lightly against the conference table nearby, keeping his tone calm and even. "Now breathe slower than the rain." Claire almost laughed at how strange the sentence sounded. But she tried it anyway. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. Outside, rainwater slid gently down the glass in silver streams. Jordan kept speaking quietly. "You are not dying." Another breath. "Your brain just thinks you forgot how to stop running." Claire closed her eyes briefly. The tightness in her chest eased little by little. Not completely. But enough. Enough to breathe normally again. When she finally looked back at him, Jordan had not moved from where he stood. No dramatic concern. No performance. Just quiet patience. "How did you know?" she asked softly. Jordan shrugged slightly. "My wife used to get panic attacks before she passed." Claire's expression shifted immediately. "I did not know." Most people do not. The answer held no bitterness. Only truth. Claire studied him carefully now, noticing grief hidden beneath his calmness for the first time. Not loud grief. Not self-pity. The quieter kind. The kind that changed how gently a person treated everyone else afterward. Down the hallway, Noah looked up from his worksheet and watched them through the operations desk glass. The child noticed what everyone else missed again. His father was helping Claire the exact same way he helped him after nightmares. Soft voice. Steady breathing. No judgment. And somehow, for reasons Claire still could not explain, that realization hurt more than the panic itself. Claire Kensington did not speak again for several seconds after Jordan mentioned his wife. The executive floor around them carried on quietly in the background. Phones rang softly behind glass offices. Elevators opened and closed. Somewhere farther down the hallway, a janitor pushed a mop bucket across marble floors with slow rhythmic squeaks. Ordinary sounds. Yet the space between Claire and Jordan suddenly felt unusually personal. "I am sorry," Claire said finally. Jordan gave a small shrug. "Been 4 years now." He looked toward Noah at the operations desk. "Some days still feel fresh though." Claire understood that more than she wanted to admit. Certain pain never aged properly. It simply learned how to sit quietly inside a person. Noah waved lightly through the glass when he noticed his father looking over. Jordan smiled back automatically. The kind of smile exhausted people only saved for family. Claire watched that exchange carefully. Then she noticed something else. The date displayed on the operations monitor beside Noah. March 17th. Tomorrow. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Slowly, almost without thinking, she looked back toward Jordan. "Tomorrow is your birthday." Jordan seemed surprised she noticed. "Guess it is. You say that like you forgot." He smiled faintly. "Birthdays stopped being important a while ago." Claire stared at him longer than necessary again. March 17th. 1987. The same date still sitting in her desk drawer upstairs beside an old hospital bracelet she had spent decades pretending did not matter anymore. Her heartbeat began tightening quietly beneath her ribs. Impossible, she told herself again. But now the words sounded weaker. Jordan checked the clock on the wall. "I should finish the overnight reports." Claire nodded slowly though her thoughts had already drifted somewhere far away. "Of course." Jordan started walking back toward the operations desk. Claire remained frozen beside the conference table for another moment before suddenly speaking. "Mr. Brooks." He turned. "Yes, ma'am." Claire hesitated. For a second, the powerful CEO vanished completely, leaving behind only a tired woman standing alone beneath office lights too bright for midnight. "What hospital were you born at?" The question caught him off guard. "I do not know." Claire tried to keep her expression neutral. "Your adoptive parents never told you?" Jordan shook his head once. "Just that I was left there after birth." The air in Claire's lungs disappeared for half a second. Jordan noticed the shift immediately. "You okay?" Claire looked away toward the skyline before answering. "Long night." Jordan studied her quietly. Something about her questions felt strange now. Not inappropriate exactly. Just personal in a way rich executives rarely became with men like him. But Jordan had spent years surviving by recognizing when people carried pain they could not explain. So instead of pushing, he simply nodded. "You should get some rest too." Claire almost laughed at the irony of being advised to rest by a man working double shifts while raising a child alone. "I will try." Jordan gave a polite nod and returned toward Noah. Claire stayed where she was until the conference room finally emptied completely around her. Then she moved fast. Too fast. She crossed the executive floor in sharp determined strides, heels echoing against polished stone while her pulse hammered painfully beneath composed breathing. Melanie looked up in surprise when Claire entered the office again. "Everything all right?" "Leave for the night." "But the Westlake, now, Melanie." The assistant immediately gathered her things and disappeared without another question. Claire locked the office door behind her the second she was alone. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the bottom desk drawer and pulled out the faded hospital bracelet she had hidden for 30 years. White plastic. Nearly colorless with age. Baby boy. March 17, 1987. St. Mary's Medical Center. Claire stared down at it while rain tapped softly against the glass behind her. Then slowly, almost afraid to confirm what her instincts already knew, she reached for her laptop and typed Jordan Brooks' birth date into the company record system again. March 17, 1987. Claire closed her eyes hard. Something deep inside her was beginning to crack open whether she wanted it to or not. And downstairs, completely unaware, Jordan sat beside Noah helping him finish a science worksheet while the silver bracelet on his wrist caught faint reflections from the office lights above. Claire Kensington did not leave the office until almost 2 in the morning. The city outside had gone quieter by then, streets below glowing beneath thin ribbons of rainwater and traffic lights changing for almost nobody. Inside the executive floor, most lights had dimmed automatically, leaving the hallways washed in soft amber shadows. But Claire remained awake behind glass walls, surrounded by pieces of a past she had spent 30 years trying not to remember. The old storage box sat open across her desk now. Dust clung to the corners. A few yellowed papers curled with age beneath faded photographs and hospital records she had not touched in decades. Claire stared at them like they belonged to another woman entirely. Younger. Frightened. Weak in ways she still hated herself for. Her fingers moved slowly through the contents until they stopped on a small knitted baby blanket folded carefully at the bottom. Pale blue. Worn soft with time. Claire pressed trembling fingertips against the fabric. Memory arrived immediately after. Rain against hospital windows. Her father's cold voice. Lawyers. Reputation. Fear. She closed her eyes tightly. Back then, Kensington family scandals disappeared quietly. That was how powerful people survived. Problems were erased before the world noticed them. And 30 years ago, Claire had been young enough to let other people decide what fear should cost her. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Claire quickly shut the box halfway before Melanie stepped cautiously into the office carrying fresh coffee. "You are still here?" her assistant asked gently. Claire nodded distractedly. Melanie noticed the old photographs scattered across the desk but wisely avoided asking questions. "I also found something strange in the archive personnel requests," Melanie said carefully. Claire looked up immediately. "What?" Melanie handed over a thin folder. "You asked me earlier to pull Jordan Brooks' onboarding records." Claire opened it quickly. Inside sat copies of temporary employment paperwork, maintenance certifications, emergency contacts, and one attached intake document from years earlier after Jordan first applied for technical work in Chicago. Her eyes scanned the page rapidly until she froze again. St. Mary's Community Foster Program. Claire's breath caught painfully. Same hospital system. Same year. Same city. Melanie noticed the change in her expression immediately. "Miss Kensington." Claire lowered the paper slowly, trying to steady her breathing. "Leave the file. Are you all right?" Claire stared down at the paperwork without answering right away. "Did anyone else see this?" "No," Claire nodded once. "Good." Melanie hesitated near the doorway. "You seem upset." Claire almost laughed at how small that word sounded compared to what was happening inside her chest. Upset was missing a meeting. Losing a contract. Breaking a heel before an interview. This felt different. Older. Dangerous in a way money could not solve. "Just tired," Claire said quietly. Melanie left without pressing further. Alone again, Claire looked back through the folder slowly. Jordan Brooks. Adopted at 11 months old. Biological records sealed. Minimal birth documentation available. Claire's hand trembled against the edge of the paper. Something deep inside her already knew before logic caught up. But she still could not fully let herself believe it. Downstairs, completely unaware, Jordan sat beside Noah in the overnight break room sharing vending machine hot chocolate while repair crews worked through the building. Noah swung his feet beneath the plastic chair. "Dad?" "Yeah. Do you think Miss Kensington likes us?" Jordan smiled faintly into the steam rising from his cup. "I think she is trying very hard not to." Noah grinned at that. Jordan looked tired tonight. More than usual. Yet there was still warmth in the way he listened to his son, in the patience behind every answer. One maintenance worker nearby watched the interaction quietly before shaking his head with admiration. "Man," he muttered softly, "your kid trusts you like the world cannot touch him." Jordan looked toward Noah for a moment before answering. "That is the job." Upstairs, Claire stood frozen beside the office window again while those same words echoed unknowingly through two different floors of the building. "That is the job. Protect the child. Keep them safe." She looked down at the faded hospital bracelet still lying beside the blue blanket on her desk. Then slowly, with trembling fingers she could no longer control, Claire turned over an old Polaroid buried beneath the records. The picture showed a younger version of herself sitting in a hospital chair 30 years earlier. Exhausted. Tear-stained. Terrified. And wrapped around the tiny infant's wrist in the photograph was the exact same silver bracelet Jordan still wore every single day. Jordan Brooks had never been curious about where he came from. At least that was what he told people whenever the subject came up. The truth was more complicated. Curiosity cost energy, and most of his life had been spent surviving instead of searching. By Friday evening, Kensington Tower had settled into a quieter rhythm after the storm. Most executives finally went home before dark. Repair crews finished the last of the flood damage in the lower parking structure. And for the first time all week, Jordan and Noah sat together in relative peace near the operations office while soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers overhead. Noah worked on a school drawing beside him while Jordan organized maintenance schedules on an old company laptop. "What are you making?" Jordan asked quietly. Noah held up the paper proudly. "A family picture." Jordan smiled faintly. "I look taller in your drawings." "You are tall. Not basketball tall." Noah giggled softly before returning to his crayons. Across the floor, Claire Kensington stepped out of a conference room carrying a tablet she had not actually read for the last 20 minutes. Sleep had become nearly impossible after discovering the old photograph. Every time she looked at Jordan now, the timeline inside her head grew harder to deny. The bracelet. The birthday. The hospital records. The age. It all fit together too perfectly. And somehow that terrified her more than uncertainty would have. She noticed Noah coloring at the desk and slowed her steps instinctively. "What are you drawing tonight?" Noah looked up immediately. "Us." Claire blinked once. "Us?" Noah nodded proudly and held up the page. 3 stick figures stood beneath a giant office building. Jordan. Noah. And Claire. Jordan looked genuinely embarrassed. "Buddy." "What?" Noah frowned innocently. "You said family can be people who make you feel safe." Claire stared at the drawing much longer than she should have. Something tightened painfully inside her chest again. Because 30 years ago she had failed at exactly that. Jordan gently took the paper from Noah before the moment became too awkward. "Sorry," he said softly to Claire. His imagination works overtime. But Claire surprised him again. "No," her voice came quieter this time. "It is a nice drawing." Jordan looked at her carefully. There were shadows beneath her eyes tonight. Exhaustion. Guilt. Something heavier. He had started recognizing the signs. Claire stood beside the desk another moment before speaking again. "Did you ever try finding your biological parents?" Jordan leaned back slowly in his chair, surprised by the question but not offended. No, never. My adoptive mother gave me a good life. He shrugged lightly. That felt more important than chasing people who left. Claire felt those words land inside her like stones sinking through water. But Jordan's expression held no anger when he said them. That somehow made it worse. You do not resent them? She asked carefully. Jordan looked down at Noah coloring beside him. Hard to spend your whole life angry when a kid is watching how you handle pain. Claire went completely still. Jordan continued organizing paperwork calmly, unaware every sentence was quietly dismantling parts of her she had spent decades protecting. Besides, he added after a moment, people leave for all kinds of reasons. Claire's throat tightened painfully. Some reasons are selfish. Jordan nodded slowly. Probably. And some are unforgivable. Jordan was quiet for a second before answering. Maybe. He looked toward the skyline outside the operations windows where city lights shimmered softly against fading rain clouds. But carrying hate all your life seems exhausting too. Claire stared at him in silence. Because the man sitting beside her had every right to hate whoever abandoned him. Yet he spoke about them with more grace than she had ever shown herself. Noah suddenly tugged lightly on Jordan's sleeve. Dad? Yeah, buddy. Did your first mom leave you because she did not love you? The question hung heavily in the quiet office. Claire stopped breathing entirely. Jordan looked down at his son carefully before answering. Then softly, with a calmness that nearly broke her apart, he said, I think sometimes grown-ups get scared and make choices they regret forever. Claire lowered her eyes immediately because suddenly she could not bear for either of them to look at her anymore. Claire Kensington could not stop hearing Jordan's words long after he and Noah left the operations floor that night. Some people get scared and make choices they regret forever. The sentence followed her through silent elevators, through empty hallways, through the lonely echo of her penthouse overlooking the sleeping city. She stood in the dark kitchen hours later still wearing her office clothes, untouched tea growing cold beside her hands while rain tapped gently against 30-foot windows. Every expensive thing around her suddenly felt strangely useless. Marble counters. Designer furniture. Paintings worth more than most homes. None of it quieted the ache spreading through her chest. Because for the first time in 30 years, Claire was no longer asking whether Jordan might be her son. Deep down, she already knew. The silver bracelet had erased the last excuse her mind could hide behind. Yet knowing the truth only made the next question unbearable. What kind of mother abandons a child and then spends decades building a life beautiful enough to hide the damage? Across town, Jordan sat at the small kitchen table inside his apartment helping Noah glue stars onto a school project while an old jazz station played softly through a cracked radio near the sink. The apartment smelled faintly of pancakes and laundry detergent. Safe smells. Ordinary smells. Noah yawned sleepily while Jordan trimmed construction paper with careful hands roughened by years of work. Dad? Yeah. You think Miss Kensington ever had kids? Jordan paused briefly before answering. Maybe. Noah tilted his head thoughtfully. She looks at you funny sometimes. Jordan laughed quietly under his breath. Funny how? Like she is trying to remember something. The answer unsettled him more than he expected. Jordan had noticed the strange looks too. The personal questions. The way Claire sometimes stared at the bracelet on his wrist like it belonged to her somehow. But people with power often carried odd habits. He tried not to overthink it. Survival had taught him not to expect hidden miracles inside ordinary life. Finish your stars, he said gently. Noah grinned and obeyed. Later that night, after Noah finally fell asleep on the couch beside his school project, Jordan stepped quietly onto the apartment fire escape with a cup of black coffee warming his hands against the cold. Chicago stretched around him in soft midnight lights and distant sirens. Exhaustion settled deep into his shoulders. Not physical exhaustion. The heavier kind. The kind single parents carried silently because there was no time to collapse properly. A black SUV rolled slowly to a stop across the street below. Jordan noticed it immediately. Years of late-night city living trained people to notice parked cars after midnight. The engine remained running. Headlights off. Through the rain-streaked windshield, Claire Kensington sat motionless behind the wheel, gripping it tightly with both hands. She had driven there without fully deciding to. One address pulled quietly from employee records. One impossible need to see him outside the office walls. To understand what kind of life he built after losing everything she never gave him. Claire stared up at the apartment building with tears threatening for the first time in years. Third floor. Warm kitchen light glowing faintly through old curtains. She could see Jordan's silhouette moving slowly inside. Could almost imagine the sound of Noah laughing in those small rooms. Family. Real family. Built without wealth. Without privilege. Without her. Her chest tightened painfully. She wanted to walk upstairs. Wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to hear him say something that might let her breathe again. But fear rooted her in place. Not fear of rejection. Worse. Fear that Jordan would forgive her too easily. Because somehow that would hurt more than anger ever could. Upstairs, Jordan leaned against the fire escape railing sipping coffee quietly when he finally noticed the black SUV below. Something about it felt familiar. He narrowed his eyes through the rain. The vehicle idled another few seconds before slowly pulling away from the curb and disappearing into the sleeping city. Jordan frowned slightly. Something felt wrong. Or maybe sad. He could not explain why. Inside the SUV, Claire gripped the steering wheel harder as tears finally slid silently down her face. And for the first time since she was 19 years old, Claire Kensington whispered the name she had buried for 3 decades into the empty darkness beside her. My son. Monday arrived wrapped in cold sunlight and the exhausted quiet that follows too many sleepless nights. Kensington Tower glittered against a clear blue Chicago sky while black SUVs lined the front entrance, dropping off executives in tailored coats and polished shoes. Inside the lobby, employees hurried through security gates carrying laptops, coffee cups, and conversations about quarterly reports. But Jordan Brooks noticed something different the moment he stepped through the revolving doors with Noah beside him. People looked at Claire Kensington carefully today. Too carefully. Her assistant walked half a step closer than usual. Security staff lowered their voices around her. Even from across the marble lobby, Jordan could tell something about her had changed over the weekend. She looked tired in a way makeup could not hide. Noah noticed it too. She looked sad again, he whispered quietly while adjusting his backpack straps. Jordan gave him a gentle look. Everybody has rough days, buddy. They crossed toward the elevators together, Jordan carrying his old toolbox in one hand and a paper bag with Noah's lunch in the other. Ordinary things. Familiar weight. Yet before they reached the elevator bank, Claire stepped out from the executive corridor unexpectedly. The entire lobby seemed to slow automatically around her. Cream-colored coat. Dark sunglasses despite the morning light pouring through the glass walls. Controlled posture. Controlled breathing. Controlled everything. But Jordan still noticed the faint redness around her eyes. Claire stopped when she saw them. For half a second, the practiced executive mask almost slipped completely. Then Noah smiled first. Morning, Miss Kensington. Claire lowered the sunglasses slowly. Good morning, Noah. Her voice sounded softer than usual. More human somehow. Noah hesitated before reaching into his backpack. I made you something. Jordan looked surprised. You did? Noah nodded proudly and pulled out a folded sheet of paper covered in crayons and marker lines. Because you looked lonely Friday. Claire stared down at the paper after he handed it to her carefully. It was another drawing. Childish. Uneven. Honest. 3 figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun outside a small apartment building instead of the office tower this time. Jordan. Noah. And Claire standing between them holding hands. Above the drawing, Noah had written in crooked blue letters, "Nobody should eat alone." The entire lobby faded into silence around her. Claire's fingers trembled slightly holding the paper. Jordan noticed immediately. "Buddy," he said gently, embarrassed again, "you cannot just give the CEO random drawings before work." "Why not?" Noah frowned. "It is nice." Jordan opened his mouth to apologize again, but Claire stopped him quietly. "No," she looked down at the drawing one more second before carefully folding it like something fragile. "It is very nice." Noah grinned proudly. Around them, several employees pretended not to watch while absolutely watching. Because nobody had ever seen Claire Kensington look emotional over a child's crayon drawing before. Jordan shifted his toolbox awkwardly. Sorry if he crossed a line. Claire looked at him then. Really looked at him. The man who had somehow raised a child gentle enough to notice loneliness in strangers despite growing up with so little himself. "He did not," she said softly. Something tightened painfully inside her chest again. Jordan noticed it now every time she looked at Noah. Like the boy unknowingly kept touching wounds she thought money had buried years ago. The elevator chimed nearby. Jordan placed one hand lightly on Noah's shoulder. "Come on, buddy." Noah nodded but paused before stepping inside. He looked back at Claire one last time. "My dad says breakfast tastes better when people stop pretending they are okay." Jordan closed his eyes briefly in tired embarrassment. "Noah." "What?" the boy asked innocently. Claire almost laughed despite the ache inside her. Almost. The elevator doors began closing slowly around Jordan and Noah. But just before they shut completely, Claire suddenly spoke. "Mr. Brooks." Jordan looked up. Claire held the folded drawing carefully against her chest now without realizing it. "Would you and Noah have dinner with me tonight?" The question stunned everyone nearby into silence. Jordan frowned in confusion while Noah's eyes widened instantly. Claire realized too late how personal the invitation sounded. But she could not take it back now. Because somewhere deep inside her, 30 years of guilt had finally become stronger than fear. Jordan almost said no. The answer sat instinctively at the edge of his tongue while the elevator doors remained half open between them. Men like him learned early to be careful around invitations from powerful people. Especially ones that suddenly became personal. But before he could respond, Noah looked up with pure 8-year-old excitement lighting his face. "Dinner?" Jordan sighed quietly under his breath. Claire noticed the reaction immediately. "You can say no," she said softly. "I just thought," her voice faded before finishing the sentence. For the first time since Jordan met her, Claire Kensington looked uncertain. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just uncertain. Jordan glanced at Noah again. The boy already looked happier than he had all week. "What kind of dinner?" Jordan asked carefully. Relief flickered briefly across Claire's face. "Nothing formal." Noah grinned instantly. "Can there be pancakes?" Jordan rubbed one tired hand across his forehead. "Buddy, pancakes are breakfast. Breakfast can happen at night." Claire surprised herself by laughing softly at that. A real laugh this time. Warm enough that several nearby employees openly stared. "I think pancakes can be arranged," she said. Noah pumped both fists quietly like he had just won something important. Jordan finally nodded once. "All right." The elevator doors closed after that, carrying Jordan and Noah upward while Claire remained standing alone in the lobby holding the folded crayon drawing against her chest like something fragile. Hours later, the executive dining suite on the 49th floor looked nothing like its usual corporate self. The long glass conference table had been replaced with a smaller round one near the windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Expensive catered meals sat untouched in the kitchen because Noah insisted pancakes counted as celebration food. Somehow, Claire had agreed. Jordan noticed immediately. You did not have to do all this. Claire adjusted a coffee mug near the table with slightly nervous hands. It is just dinner. But Jordan could tell she rarely hosted anything this personal. The room still smelled faintly of fresh flowers and expensive perfume, but now there was syrup on the counter beside paper napkins Noah had already unfolded too messily. Somehow the imperfection softened the entire space. Noah sat at the table happily drowning pancakes in syrup while city lights shimmered behind him through enormous windows. "This is the fanciest breakfast dinner ever," he announced proudly. Jordan smiled despite himself. Claire watched the interaction quietly while pouring coffee into simple ceramic mugs instead of executive glassware. Small details. But Jordan noticed them. "You okay?" he asked her gently after Noah became distracted drawing smiley faces in syrup with his fork. Claire looked up, surprised by the question. "Why would you ask that?" Jordan shrugged lightly. "You seem nervous." The honesty caught her off guard. Most people around Claire lied constantly to protect themselves. Jordan simply observed. "I do not usually do this," she admitted softly. "Dinner with employees?" Jordan teased quietly. "Dinner with people who feel real." The sentence settled between them in silence. Outside, snow had begun drifting lightly across downtown Chicago, soft against the dark skyline. Noah suddenly climbed down from his chair holding another folded drawing. "I made this one today too." Jordan gave him an exhausted look. "Buddy." "What?" Noah handed the paper directly to Claire. "This one is better." Claire unfolded it slowly. The drawing showed 3 people sitting around a dinner table beneath hanging lights. Jordan, Noah, and her. But this time Noah had written something beneath the picture in crooked green marker. "Families are the people who stay." Claire stared at the sentence so long her vision blurred unexpectedly. Jordan noticed the sudden change in her breathing immediately. Claire. It was the first time he had used her first name. Quiet. Natural. Without thinking. Claire looked up at him with tears finally gathering openly in her eyes. 30 years of guilt. 30 years of silence. 30 years of pretending she could outrun one terrible decision. And suddenly she could not carry it anymore. "Jordan," she whispered shakily. "There is something I need to tell you." Noah looked up curiously from his pancakes while snow continued falling softly beyond the glass walls of the city.